The mysterious storm. Ethan Cross had never been one to fear storms. Living on the outskirts of a small town, his farmhouse was no stranger to the occasional thunderstorm. But tonight, something felt different. The sky darkened unnaturally fast, as if the heavens themselves were conspiring against the tranquility of the land. Ethan stood by the window of his kitchen, a cup of lukewarm coffee forgotten in his hand, as he watched the storm approach with unsettling speed. The wind howled like a wolf in the distance, and the rain began to batter the glass with the intensity of 1,000 hammers. Thunder shook the foundation of his home, rattling the old wooden beams, as if the earth itself were in turmoil. Ethan's fingers tightened around the mug, but it did little to ground him. His thoughts, like the storm outside, were tumultuous, clouded by grief and regret. 3 years had passed since Emily's death, but the pain of that loss still haunted him. The world outside may have been alive with fury, but inside, Ethan felt as though everything had been frozen in time. His purpose, his will to continue, lost along with her. He didn't need to look at the framed photograph on the mantel to recall her smile. That smile used to light up the room, filling their little farmhouse with warmth and laughter. Now it was just a memory, a fleeting echo of a life he once knew. He hadn't even realized how much time had passed since he'd last stepped into his medical room, the old equipment gathering dust upstairs. The thought of healing, of saving lives, no longer held any meaning for him. It had been her dream, her passion. She had been the one to always believe in the power of medicine to change the world. Without her, all of it felt pointless. As the storm raged outside, something caught his attention. A dark shape barely visible in the yard through the torrential rain. His heart skipped a beat, and his breath caught in his throat. Was it a tree branch, an animal? But no, it was too large, too unnatural to be either. Ethan's instincts, honed by years of medical training, kicked in immediately. Setting the mug down on the countertop, he grabbed a flashlight from a drawer and stepped out onto the porch. The cold rain hit him like a slap, soaking through his clothes in an instant. He pushed forward, determined to investigate despite the worsening weather. The flashlight's beam cut through the downpour, illuminating the yard until it landed on the figure. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't a fallen tree. It was a person. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as he sprinted toward the figure. The wind howled louder, drowning out any thoughts that tried to form in his mind. As he drew closer, he realized that this wasn't just a person. It was a woman, lying motionless on the ground, her skin pale and glowing faintly under the storm's fury. Her clothes were torn, their material shimmering as if alive, and intricate patterns danced across her skin, patterns that seemed to pulse with a strange energy. Ethan's pulse quickened, his medical mind racing to identify the cause of her condition. But there were no answers, only more questions. "Can you hear me?" he shouted, his voice lost in the wind. But the woman didn't respond. Without hesitation, he knelt beside her, brushing the rain from her face. Her eyes fluttered open, and Ethan recoiled in shock. Her irises were not human, shifting and changing in a kaleidoscope of colors, as though they held a universe of their own. "Help," she whispered, her voice faint but filled with an urgent desperation. Ethan didn't hesitate. He had no idea who or what this woman was, but he knew one thing for certain. She was in need of help. His hands moved quickly, lifting her as gently as he could. She weighed almost nothing, her body unnaturally light, her form delicate yet otherworldly. With every step he took, the rain poured harder, the cold air biting at his skin. He could barely see through the downpour, but he kept moving. His mind wasn't on the storm or the mystery of the woman. It was on something else, the feeling that for some inexplicable reason, he couldn't let her die. He reached the farmhouse and kicked open the door, his breath coming in sharp gasps. He carried her inside, laying her gently on the examination table in the small medical room that had once been filled with so much life. As he flipped on the overhead light, he saw the extent of her injuries. Severe burns marred her body, but these weren't like any burns Ethan had ever seen. The edges of the wounds shimmered, shifting and pulsating as though they were alive. His breath caught in his throat. "What happened to you?" he whispered, his voice trembling. Her eyes fluttered open once more, but it wasn't words that she spoke next. She whispered something that made his blood run cold. "Crash," she said, her voice barely audible. Ethan's mind raced. What crash? And what was she trying to say? Before he could ask further, she struggled to speak again, her hand reaching up weakly, gripping his wrist with a strength that shouldn't have been possible. "Your blood," she rasped, her voice urgent now. "Need your blood." Ethan stared at her, confusion clouding his mind. "My blood?" He couldn't understand. The idea was absurd, but looking at the way her skin glowed, the strange shimmer that radiated from her injuries, he couldn't deny that something otherworldly was happening. As he stared into her kaleidoscopic eyes, the storm continued to rage outside, and Ethan realized, with a sudden clarity, that his life, his purpose, was about to take an unexpected turn, one that would change everything he thought he knew about himself and about the world. The choice that changed everything. The storm outside was relentless, as if the universe itself was intent on forcing Ethan to face something beyond his comprehension. He stood frozen for a moment, staring at the woman on the examination table, her body still trembling from the injuries she had sustained. Her once glowing skin now appeared pale and fragile, as though the life within her was fading. His hands hovered above her, unsure of what to do next. The urgency in her eyes, those kaleidoscopic irises swirling with an unspoken plea, was all he needed to feel the weight of her desperation. "Your blood," she whispered again, her voice strained, as though speaking took every ounce of strength she had left. "It will save me." Her hand, delicate but surprisingly strong, grasped his wrist, pulling him closer, her touch almost electric, sending a shock through his body. The strange patterns on her skin pulsed with each beat of her heart, glowing brighter as if responding to the rising tension in the room. Ethan's mind raced. He had never encountered anything like this. Medical science had no answer for what was happening. There were no books, no theories, no precedents. He had been trained to deal with trauma, with injuries, but this was beyond him. Yet in that moment, he realized he couldn't just walk away. He had tried that once before, when Emily had died. He had promised himself he would never let another life slip through his fingers. Not again. "What do you mean, my blood?" he asked, his voice shaking with disbelief. "What are you? Where did you come from?" Her eyes flickered with something akin to recognition, like a secret she had been waiting to reveal. "I am Kayla," she said softly, her voice growing stronger with each passing second. "I am not from your world. But your blood, it's compatible. It will save me. Without it, I won't survive." Ethan stepped back, his mind trying to process the words. Alien. She wasn't human. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. But her plea, the intensity in her eyes, seemed to override all logic. She wasn't just asking for help. She was begging for survival. Her words haunted him, pulling him deeper into this impossible situation. His gaze drifted to his medical kit on the counter, his fingers twitching with the instinct to help. But this wasn't like anything he had ever faced. His blood. He had always believed there were limits to what could be done to save someone. There was always a line, a point beyond which medicine couldn't go. But as he looked back at Kayla, her body still fighting against the ravages of her injuries, he knew there was no more time for hesitation. Without another word, Ethan rolled up his sleeve, the cool air of the room brushing against his skin. He glanced at Kayla one more time, her face now illuminated by the soft glow of the storm outside, and then he took the needle from the transfusion kit. His hands were steady, but his mind was anything but. He was about to do something that defied all logic, all reason, all scientific understanding. Yet, for the first time in years, he felt something else. something he hadn't felt in a long time. A sense of purpose. Kayla's eyes followed his every movement, her gaze unblinking, almost searching. "It's not just any blood," she murmured, her voice soft but insistent. "It's your blood. It's the only thing that can save me. There's no time left." Ethan's heart hammered in his chest as he inserted the needle, the cool metal sliding into his vein. The sensation was strange, almost surreal. He watched, transfixed, as his own blood began to flow into the tubing, and he felt a shiver of unease snake up his spine. There was something about the way her skin seemed to respond to it that unnerved him. The patterns on her body pulsed more vigorously as his blood began to move through her veins. It was as though her entire being was coming alive, feeding off of the transfusion, drawing strength from it. Kayla gasped, her chest rising and falling rapidly as the energy around her seemed to shift. The shimmering burns on her body began to heal, slowly at first, then faster, the wounds knitting together before his very eyes. The glow from her skin grew brighter, more intense, as if the life force from his blood was resurrecting something deep inside her. Ethan stepped back, his breath caught in his throat. What he was witnessing was nothing short of miraculous. Her breathing steadied, the sharp, shallow gasps turning into slow, rhythmic inhalations. Kayla's hand, which had been gripping his wrist moments ago, relaxed, and she shifted slightly, her movements more fluid than before. She blinked, her kaleidoscopic eyes now clear and sharp, her gaze locking onto his with an intensity that made his stomach tighten. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice stronger now, almost vibrant. "You have saved me. Your blood, it's unlike anything I've encountered before." Ethan could only stare at her, his mind still struggling to comprehend what had just transpired. This wasn't possible. She couldn't be real. Aliens didn't exist. And yet, standing before him, was undeniable proof that the universe was far stranger than anything he had ever known. "Who are you, really?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Kayla's lips curled into a faint smile, though there was a trace of sadness in her eyes. "I told you, I am Kayla. My people have visited this world before, long ago. You call us myths, legends, but we are real. And now you are part of something much larger than you realize." Ethan's mind whirled as he processed her words. Myths, legends. He didn't understand. But before he could ask her more, the storm outside grew even fiercer, the winds howling like a living creature, rattling the windows and shaking the walls of the farmhouse. It was as if the very atmosphere around them was alive, aware of the strange connection now forged between him and Kayla. "Tell me what happened," Ethan demanded, his voice firm, his heart pounding in his chest. "What brought you here? Why are you here?" Kayla's expression darkened, her eyes shifting once more to the storm raging outside. "I was pursued," she said, her voice tinged with fear. "My ship was damaged during the chase. They are still coming. And if they find me, if they find us, they will destroy everything." Ethan's stomach churned. Whatever she had been through, whatever danger was still chasing her, it was far from over. And now he was caught in the middle of it all. But one thing was clear, he couldn't just walk away. This was just the beginning. The silent pursuit. The farmhouse had never felt so small, so fragile. The storm outside continued to rage, its fury amplified by the tension now thick in the air. Ethan stood frozen, still absorbing Kayla's words. They are still coming. She had said it with such a quiet, unsettling certainty that Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. The fear in her eyes wasn't just the result of her injuries. It was the terror of something far worse, an unseen enemy hunting her, relentless and unforgiving. Kayla, though physically healed from her injuries, looked nothing like the woman who had first arrived at the farmhouse. Her skin shimmered with a strange vitality, and her breathing had slowed to a calm rhythm. Yet, her demeanor was far from at peace. She kept her eyes fixed on the window, her senses alert, as if listening for the faintest sound outside. She seemed to be waiting, expecting something, or someone. "What did you mean?" Ethan asked, his voice almost a whisper as he stood a few paces away. "What's chasing you?" Kayla turned her gaze toward him, her eyes swirling with a kaleidoscope of colors that seemed to deepen with each passing second. It was almost hypnotic, yet there was an underlying sadness in them, a deep sorrow that had been born from something much older than her injuries. "My people," she began, her voice steady but tinged with grief, "are not the only ones who know about this planet. Others, much darker beings, have been hunting us for centuries." Ethan felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had been a doctor for years, but this was something completely beyond his realm of understanding. Yet he couldn't deny the sense of urgency that hung in the room. He had never felt so powerless, so far removed from the world he once knew. "They've been following us for years," she continued, her voice lowering. "My people are explorers, travelers across the stars. But we are not invincible. We have made enemies, enemies that do not forgive. I was part of an expedition, a mission to gather knowledge, to learn from your world. But something went wrong. Our ship was intercepted, damaged beyond repair. And now, they want us dead." Ethan took a slow, cautious step toward her, his mind racing. The pieces weren't adding up. "You said your ship was damaged. How did you get here? If your people are so advanced, why not just leave?" he asked. Kayla's eyes darkened as she turned away, looking back toward the storm. "We can't leave. Not without help. And even if we could, we wouldn't be safe. They'll find us eventually. They always do." Her voice trembled slightly, and for the first time, Ethan saw the true weight of her fear. It wasn't just about survival. It was about something much bigger, a deeper threat that was closing in. He looked outside through the rain-soaked windows, his heart heavy with an unfamiliar sense of dread. It was then that he heard it, a low hum, distant but growing louder. His ears strained to catch the sound as it reverberated through the walls of the farmhouse. Kayla stiffened, her body going rigid as she turned back to him. "They're here," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "They're close." Ethan's breath hitched as he quickly moved to the window, his eyes scanning the surrounding darkness. The storm, though intense, couldn't hide the creeping sense of danger that was now palpable in the air. He couldn't see anything in the rain, but the hum, no, the vibration, was unmistakable. Something large, something powerful, was approaching. "We need to leave," Kayla said urgently, her voice now filled with a sense of purpose that had been absent earlier. "They will destroy everything here if they find me. You're not safe either." Ethan turned to her, confusion and panic swirling in his mind. "Where would we go? You said your ship was damaged." Kayla hesitated for a moment. And then, to his surprise, a small, determined smile tugged at the corner of her lips. "Not all of us are without a ship, Ethan. There are others like me, hidden among your kind, and they are the key to your survival." Her words hung in the air, cryptic and mysterious, but Ethan had no time to ask more questions. The hum outside had grown louder, now joined by a sharp mechanical whirring. It was as if something was materializing out of the very storm itself, like a shadow that moved in time with the chaos of the weather. "Stay close," Kayla warned, her voice hardening as she moved toward the back of the farmhouse. "I'll guide you, but you have to trust me. If we don't act now, you will not live to see tomorrow." Ethan followed, his heart racing in his chest. His thoughts whirled, conflicting between disbelief and the undeniable pull of survival. He had no choice but to trust her. His mind, trained to analyze and diagnose, couldn't make sense of what was happening, but instinct told him that this wasn't just some freak accident. Kayla had appeared out of nowhere, and now she was guiding him through a storm, not just outside, but within the very fabric of the world itself. Kayla stopped at a back door and pressed her hand against the frame. The door opened with a soft click, revealing nothing but a darkened field beyond the farmhouse. She turned to Ethan, her expression serious. "We're not safe here. They'll be looking for the farmhouse. We need to get to the place where it all started. My people left something behind. Something that can help us. It's our only chance. Ethan's mind was reeling. A place where it all started. What did she mean? His feet moved on their own as he followed her into the rain, the weight of the unknown pressing on his chest. Every instinct told him to run, to get as far away as possible from this madness. But a different instinct had taken over, one that urged him to stay, to fight, to protect. As they crossed the yard, the sound of the hum grew louder, more insistent. Ethan looked over his shoulder, his breath fogging up in the cold air, and saw something that sent a wave of terror through his veins. A ship, no, a craft, emerged from the storm, its outline barely visible against the darkness. It was huge, shaped like nothing he had ever seen, its surface glowing with an eerie light. And then, from within the shadows of the craft, figures began to emerge, tall, shadowy beings whose forms seemed to distort and shimmer in the rain. They were closing in. "Run," Kayla shouted. "Run now." Ethan didn't need any more urging. His legs carried him forward, faster than he had ever moved, as the storm raged around them, and the fate of everything, of everyone, hung in the balance. Into the abyss. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest, his breaths shallow and fast as he and Kayla sprinted across the drenched field behind the farmhouse. The storm, relentless in its fury, felt like it was conspiring against them, as though the very earth itself was being torn apart. His boots sank into the mud with every step, and the howling winds seemed to scream at them, urging them to stop, to give up. But there was no turning back now. They were being hunted. Behind them, the eerie hum of the alien craft grew louder, the sound vibrating in his bones. Ethan could barely keep up with Kayla, whose movements were swift and graceful, as if she were gliding across the mud. Her glowing skin shimmered faintly in the darkness, a beacon in the storm, guiding him forward. Despite the chaos around them, there was a calmness in her demeanor, an otherworldly confidence that made him question everything he thought he knew about reality. "They're getting closer," Ethan gasped, trying to push through the thickening mud. "What now? Where are we going?" Kayla didn't answer immediately. Her eyes scanned the landscape ahead, her gaze sharp and calculating. She knew exactly where they were heading. "There's a place, hidden, old, where they can't follow. It's where the ship went down, where it all began. But we have to reach it before they do." Ethan could see it now, a faint glow in the distance, barely visible through the rain. It wasn't just a light. It was something else, something strange, like a pulse of energy, radiating from the earth itself. He had no idea what it was, but instinct told him it was their only hope. They pushed on, the sound of the alien craft still closing in, but now there was something else. An unsettling silence had taken hold of the storm. The wind stopped howling, and the rain seemed to slow, almost as if the world around them was holding its breath. The only sound was the rhythmic thud of their footsteps in the wet grass, the pulsing glow growing stronger as they approached. "What are we running toward?" Ethan asked, his voice tight with fear and confusion. "What's out there?" Kayla's pace didn't falter, though her expression darkened. "A relic. My people used it for centuries. It's a source of energy, something that can hide us, protect us. But it's also something that can change the course of everything. I don't know if it will work for you, for humans, but it's our only chance." Ethan had no idea what she was talking about. A relic. Energy. This all felt like something out of a science fiction novel, but as they ran, he couldn't afford to question her now. He just had to trust her. For reasons he couldn't explain, he had to. The glow in the distance was growing brighter, pulsating in a steady rhythm. It was as though the earth itself was alive, calling to them. The wind picked up again, this time carrying with it an unmistakable hum, a sound so low, so deep, that Ethan felt it vibrating in his chest. Then, without warning, Kayla stopped. She raised her hand, signaling for Ethan to do the same. He skidded to a halt, his heart racing, as he saw what she was looking at. In the distance, barely visible through the downpour, a shadow had appeared, a figure, or figures. They were humanoid in shape but distorted, their outlines flickering like static on a broken screen. "They found us," Kayla said quietly, her voice laced with fear. Ethan turned to look at her, his mind reeling. He didn't know how to fight them, didn't even know who or what they were. He looked back at the approaching figures, their movements jerky and unnatural. Whatever they were nothing like the aliens he had imagined from movies or books. They were something darker, something that seemed to belong in the shadows. "They're not just hunting you, are they?" Ethan asked, his voice low, barely above a whisper. "They're hunting us both." Kayla didn't respond, but he could see the fear in her eyes now, raw and unguarded. These beings, whatever they were, weren't just chasing her. They were after everything. Ethan felt a cold, sinking sensation in his stomach. The stakes were higher than he had imagined. It wasn't just survival now. It was about the very survival of humanity. "Do we go on?" he asked, his mind racing with the weight of their situation. Kayla's eyes flickered toward the glow ahead, then back at the approaching figures. "We don't have a choice. The relic. It's the only way to stop them. To stop all of this from reaching a point where it's beyond our control." Before Ethan could ask what she meant, Kayla grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the glowing light. She was moving faster now, urgency in her every step. But Ethan hesitated. He wanted to know more, wanted to understand what was happening, but the time for questions had passed. They were running out of time. As they neared the light, Ethan saw it clearly for the first time. A large, jagged structure, half buried in the earth. It looked like a ruin, ancient and alien in design, but still intact. Strange symbols were etched into the surface of the stone, their meaning completely foreign to him. The glow was emanating from within the structure, pulsing like a heartbeat, casting long shadows on the wet ground. Kayla paused just outside the entrance, looking back at the distant figures. They were getting closer, too close. "This is it," she said, her voice trembling. "Once we enter, they can't follow. But there's no turning back." Ethan didn't hesitate. He had no choice. He followed her into the structure, the air growing warmer and more electric as they crossed the threshold. The hum of the storm outside faded into silence as the door sealed shut behind them. Inside, the light was blinding, swirling with energy, and the stone walls seemed to pulse with life. "What is this place?" Ethan breathed, awestruck. Kayla's gaze softened as she looked around. "It's a place of refuge, a sanctuary. But it's also a weapon, one that could change everything, for better or worse." Ethan's mind raced as the walls seemed to close in around him. He had no idea what was coming next, but he knew one thing for sure: nothing would ever be the same again. They had crossed a line, and whatever lay ahead, it was more than they could possibly comprehend. The unseen truth, the silence inside the ancient structure was oppressive. The walls, covered in alien symbols that Ethan could barely comprehend, seemed to pulse with an energy all their own, vibrating in tune with the strange hum that still echoed in his chest. The faint, rhythmic glow that illuminated the cavernous interior cast long, undulating shadows that danced across the jagged stone. Ethan felt a strange sense of awe and dread wash over him, the weight of what had just happened pressing down on him with each passing second. Kayla led the way deeper into the structure, her every step sure and purposeful, as though she knew this place in her bones. Ethan followed, his mind still reeling from everything he had witnessed so far. None of it made sense. None of it was even remotely close to anything he had ever imagined. A woman, not human, asking for his blood to save her. And now, an ancient relic, hidden from the world, calling them forward. His thoughts churned, but before he could voice his concerns, Kayla stopped suddenly, turning to face him. Her kaleidoscopic eyes shimmered with an intensity that made him hesitate. "You're asking questions I can't answer yet, Ethan," she said softly, her voice steady but tinged with the weight of unspoken truths. "But you need to know something. This place, it's not just a refuge. It's something far more dangerous than you realize." Ethan frowned, his pulse quickening. "Dangerous? I thought you said it would protect us." Kayla shook her head slowly, her expression solemn. "It can protect us, but it also has the power to destroy everything. It's a weapon created by my people long ago, but it's been dormant for centuries. We never meant for anyone to find it." "Then why are we here?" Ethan asked, feeling a knot form in his stomach. "If it's so dangerous, why bring me here?" Kayla met his gaze, her eyes filled with an emotion he couldn't place. Regret, fear, and something else he couldn't quite identify. "Because you're not just a bystander in this story, Ethan. You're part of it. This relic, this place, it recognizes you. It chose you." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Chose him. He was just a simple doctor, grieving the loss of his wife, trying to make sense of the chaos that had suddenly been thrust upon him. "What do you mean, it chose me?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Kayla stepped closer, her glowing skin casting an ethereal light on her features. "Your blood, Ethan. It's more than just a life force. Your lineage, your people, carry something unique, something that this relic needs." Ethan stared at her, struggling to process the weight of her words. "My blood," he repeated, disbelief clouding his mind. "What are you talking about? My family's just ordinary." Kayla's eyes softened, the kaleidoscope of colors within them swirling gently. "No, Ethan. You're not ordinary. Not anymore. You have a connection to this world that your kind has long forgotten. Your ancestors, they knew about us, about our people. And in the blood of your line, there's something special, something that can awaken this place, something that can either save or destroy everything." Ethan took a step back, his mind racing as the gravity of the situation sank in. Save or destroy everything. Was she implying that the fate of the entire world, no, of humanity itself, was now tied to him? Before he could respond, the air around them seemed to shift. The ground vibrated, as if the structure itself was reacting to Kayla's words. A low rumble echoed through the walls, followed by a deep, resonating hum that seemed to come from deep within the stone. Ethan's skin prickled, the hair on the back of his neck standing on end. "It's awakening," Kayla whispered, her voice a mix of awe and fear. "The relic is responding to you." Ethan looked around, but the darkness of the structure only grew deeper, as if they were standing on the edge of something vast and ancient. "What is it awakening to?" he asked, his voice trembling. Kayla's expression darkened, her eyes narrowing. "To you, to the blood you carry, to the truth that's been buried for centuries." The ground trembled beneath their feet again, this time more violently, as if the relic itself was coming alive, responding to whatever power had been unlocked by Ethan's presence. The symbols on the walls flared brightly, casting fleeting shadows of strange, alien shapes across the cavern. And then, the pulse of energy surged again, growing louder, more insistent, vibrating through Ethan's very bones. "What's happening?" he demanded, panic creeping into his voice. Kayla stepped forward, her face now shadowed by the growing intensity of the energy around them. "It's testing you, Ethan. It's seeing if you're worthy of the power it holds, if you can control it." Ethan's heart raced. Control it? How was he supposed to control something like this? Something that was beyond his understanding, beyond his comprehension. He was a man who had once healed with medicine. But this was something else entirely. Suddenly, the walls of the structure seemed to shift, the glowing symbols pulsing with increasing speed. The very air seemed to crackle with energy. And then, without warning, a voice, a deep, resonant sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once, spoke. "The blood is awakened. The chosen one steps forward. Will he harness the power, or will he perish in its wake?" Ethan froze, his breath caught in his throat. The voice, if it could even be called a voice, sounded like it was speaking directly into his mind, reverberating with ancient authority. His pulse quickened as the realization hit him. The relic wasn't just testing him. It was calling to him, judging him. And in that moment, he realized that the fate of everything was now in his hands. He had no choice but to step forward. Kayla's voice, almost drowned out by the growing hum of the structure, cut through his thoughts. You must decide, Ethan. The power is within you. But it's not just about saving us. It's about something far greater. You have the ability to change the course of history, but you also have the ability to destroy it. Ethan's mind was overwhelmed, but his feet moved on their own. He couldn't stop now. He didn't know what was happening or how, but one thing was clear. He had crossed a threshold, and the world was about to change forever. As he stepped closer to the pulsating light, a strange calm washed over him. The weight of the decision ahead seemed to dissipate. He wasn't just fighting for his own survival anymore. This was bigger than anything he had ever known. He had to embrace this power, whatever it was. He had to harness it. And as he reached out with trembling hands, the relic responded, its light blinding, its energy surging with a force that took his breath away. The power unleashed. Ethan's hand hovered inches from the glowing surface of the relic, the energy it emitted pulsing with such intensity that it seemed to hum through his fingertips, vibrating up his arm and into the depths of his chest. It was like the heartbeat of the earth itself, ancient and powerful, calling to him in a language he couldn't understand. The air around him crackled, charged with the promise of something monumental, something impossible. For a moment, the world stood still. The storm outside, the hum of the alien craft approaching, the relentless tension in the air, all of it faded into the background. All that mattered was the relic, the energy within it, and the power that seemed to beckon him to reach out and claim it. Kayla's voice, low and urgent, broke through his trance. Ethan, don't do it unless you're ready. The relic won't hold back. It will give you everything, or it will take everything. Her words were a warning, but they felt like a distant echo against the storm of thoughts swirling in Ethan's mind. What was he even reaching for? What did the relic promise? And if it was really that powerful, how could he possibly control it? His thoughts scrambled for answers, but all he could feel was the pulse of power in the very air, the overwhelming urge to touch the relic and see what it would offer him. Kayla's face, lit by the strange glow, showed a mix of concern and something else, hope. She had seen this happen before, but perhaps not like this. Not with someone who wasn't one of her people. I've heard stories, she murmured, her voice soft, almost reverent, of the chosen one awakening the relic, of those who are destined to wield its power. But it's never been a human. I don't know what will happen if you touch it. Ethan didn't respond. He couldn't. His body was already moving, drawn to the relic by some invisible force, like a moth to a flame. He reached out, his fingers grazing the surface. The moment he made contact, the world exploded around him. Light, pure and blinding, surged up his arm and through his chest. The relic seemed to come alive, its energy twisting and flowing through him, filling every cell of his body with fire and cold in equal measure. His mind screamed, overwhelmed by the torrent of sensations that flooded his consciousness. It felt as though he was being torn apart and remade all at once. Visions flashed before his eyes. Alien worlds, the vastness of space, civilizations rising and falling in the blink of an eye. In that moment, Ethan understood. He understood that the relic wasn't just a tool, it was a bridge between worlds, between past and future, between human and alien. It was a conduit for something greater than anyone could comprehend. The power it held was both a blessing and a curse, a force that could reshape the very fabric of reality or destroy it. Ethan, Kayla shouted, her voice cutting through the storm of thoughts swirling in his mind. You have to control it. You have to focus. But there was no focus. There was no control. The power was too vast, too overwhelming. It was like trying to hold the ocean in his hands. Ethan's body began to tremble, not from the cold, but from the sheer weight of the force coursing through him. The walls of the structure seemed to bend and warp, the symbols on the stone glowing brighter and brighter as the relic's energy surged. The ground beneath them cracked, and deep rumbles echoed through the cavern. He couldn't hold on much longer. A flash of Kayla's face, her expression one of desperation, cut through the chaos. "You're losing yourself," she warned, her voice sharp. "Don't let it consume you." But the power was already too far gone. The force of it pushed against his mind, against everything he knew about himself. Ethan felt his thoughts slipping away like sand through his fingers. He was no longer in control. He was merely a vessel, a conduit for the energy that poured into him. Then, in the depths of his mind, a voice spoke. It was neither human nor alien, but something ancient, something that resonated in the deepest corners of his being. "The choice has been made." It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. The relic had chosen him, and now there was no going back. The power was his, whether he was ready or not. Suddenly, the overwhelming force began to recede, leaving Ethan gasping for breath, his body shuddering. The light from the relic dimmed, but its pulse remained steady, a soft hum that seemed to reverberate in his bones. He looked down at his hands, expecting to see them shaking uncontrollably. But they were still, steady, as if the power had found a place within him. Kayla, still standing a few feet away, was staring at him, her eyes wide in disbelief. What did you do?" she asked, her voice a mix of awe and fear. Ethan opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He felt different, changed. The relic had given him power, but at what cost? And what would it demand in return? Before he could answer, the ground beneath them shifted once more, but this time it wasn't the relic. The unmistakable hum of the alien craft returned, louder than ever. Kayla's eyes snapped to the entrance of the structure, her face paling. "They're here," she said, her voice tight. "They found us." Ethan turned toward the entrance, and for the first time, he understood what the relic had meant. He wasn't just a human anymore. He was something more, a conduit, a bridge between worlds. And with that power came a responsibility he wasn't sure he was ready for. But there was no time to question it now. The storm outside had nothing on the storm that was coming for them. And this time, it wouldn't be just a battle for survival. This was something far larger, far darker, than either of them could have ever anticipated. The relic had given him the power. But now, Ethan would have to decide how to use it, and what he was willing to sacrifice in the process.